You've entered the archives of the forgotten. I'm Doctor, Haunted. Tonight, I'll show you what was never meant to be heard. Just remember, once you know the truth, you can't unhear it. I never told anyone what happened that night at Cedar Grove Asylum. Not my friends who waited in the car, not the therapist my parents made me see for the nightmares that followed, not even my wife, who still wonders why I wake up screaming some nights. But I need to tell someone now before what I saw there follows me any further into my life. It was 5 years ago, during my second year of college. I was 20 years old, still carrying that stupid invincibility complex most young guys have. My roommate Jake was obsessed with urban exploration videos. He wanted to start his own channel and needed a crew. "Come on, Ryan," he said one Friday afternoon. "Cedar Grove is just sitting there 30 minutes outside town. The fence has holes in it. We'll be in and out in 2 hours, tops." I should have said no. Something about the old psychiatric hospital had always given me a weird feeling, but peer pressure is a powerful thing. "Fine," I said, but we stay together and we're out of there before midnight. That evening, 4 of us piled into Jake's Honda Civic. Jake, me, Tori, Jake's girlfriend, and Marcus, our floor mate who brought expensive camera equipment. We parked about a quarter mile away on a service road, hidden behind overgrown bushes. The walk to Cedar Grove was quiet. The October air had a chill that seemed to crawl beneath my jacket. The moon was nearly full, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement leading to the main entrance. Cedar Grove Asylum had been closed for almost 30 years after allegations of patient abuse and illegal experimental procedures. The building was a massive 3-story structure with 2 wings extending from a central administrative section. Most windows were broken, and nature had begun reclaiming the grounds. The front doors were chained shut, but a side entrance had been pried open. The smell hit me first, a mixture of mold, decay, and something chemical I couldn't place. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, a steady rhythm like a metronome counting down. For the first hour, everything was fine, creepy, but fine. We explored the ground floor, finding old reception areas, a cafeteria with upturned tables, and a recreation room with a broken piano in the corner. "Let's check upstairs," Jake suggested. "The patient rooms will make better footage." The central staircase groaned under our weight. At the top, a long corridor stretched in both directions, lined with doors, some open, some closed, some hanging off their hinges. "Patient rooms to the left, treatment rooms to the right," Jake said, consulting his floor plan. We went left, passing room after room of small, dismal spaces with rusted bed frames bolted to the floor. Some had scratches on the walls, others had faded personal items left behind. "This place is sad," Tori whispered, her earlier enthusiasm subdued. I nodded, shining my light into another empty room. These were people, real people who suffered here. That's when we heard it, a soft sound from down the hall, like someone shuffling their feet across the floor. We all froze. "Probably just the building settling," Jake whispered unconvincingly. We continued, but more slowly now. At the end of the corridor stood partially open double doors. "This should be the East Wing secure ward," Jake said, "where they kept the most disturbed patients." The secure ward had rooms with heavy doors, small observation windows, and multiple locks. Our flashlights cast strange shadows that seemed to move independently of our movements. We found a hydrotherapy room with a large, rusted tub with straps attached to the sides. A drain in the center of the floor was stained dark brown. "They used to submerge patients in ice water to calm them," Jake explained. "Sometimes they'd keep them under for hours." I found patient records in a cabinet. "Patient exhibits extreme agitation and claims to hear voices emanating from the walls," I read aloud. "Hydrotherapy administered for 3 hours. Patient subdued, but continues to insist that they are watching from inside the building." We moved on to the isolation corridor, narrower, with smaller rooms spaced further apart. Each had a heavy door with only a small slot at eye level. My flashlight went out completely despite the new batteries. The darkness pressed in immediately. That's when the whispering started. At first, I thought it was the wind, but it grew clearer. Multiple voices coming from behind the closed isolation room doors. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice tight. Jake and Marcus exchanged glances. "Hear what?" They couldn't hear it. But when I looked at Tori, I saw in her eyes that she heard it too. A door at the end of the hallway slowly creaked open. No wind could have moved that heavy door. "Okay, time to go," Jake said, his bravado finally cracking. We turned to leave, but the way back looked different. Doors that had been open were now closed. Doors that had been closed stood open. One by one, all our lights failed. Complete darkness filled the corridor. I felt a cold hand brush against my arm and jerked away. "Everyone hold hands," Jake ordered. "We're getting out of here now." I felt a hand grab mine, small, ice cold. "Tori," I whispered. No answer. We stumbled forward, guided only by memory and the hand leading me forward. The voices grew louder. The others were calling my name, their voices growing more distant. "Ryan, where are you going? Ryan!" I opened my eyes and found I could suddenly see enough to make out that I was being pulled down a different corridor by what I had thought was Tori's hand. Except Tori was behind me with the others, and the hand gripping mine was gray and withered. I yanked my hand free with a scream. The emergency exit sign flickered to life, casting a red glow. The corridor was filled with shadowy figures, all turning toward me. I ran, somehow finding my way back to the main staircase and out of the building. My friends emerged minutes later. They told me I'd run off alone, that they'd searched for me frantically. They hadn't seen any figures or heard any voices. But when we checked the camera footage, every minute after we entered the East Wing was corrupted, just static and distorted images. Except for one frame showing the isolation corridor filled with patients in hospital gowns surrounding us. And at the front, a withered hand reaching toward the camera. Cedar Grove Asylum was demolished a year after our visit. They're building apartments there now. I wonder if the new residents will hear the whispers too, or if whatever was trapped in those halls finally found peace. Or maybe they're just waiting for someone else to follow them into the darkness. The thing about drowning is that it's supposedly peaceful in the end. Your lungs fill with water, your vision dims, and you drift away. That's what they say. But what I experienced at Blackwater Marina wasn't peaceful. It was anything but. I'm a marine biology graduate student studying coastal ecosystem degradation. 3 months ago, I took a research position that brought me to Crestfall Bay, a once thriving fishing community, now in decline since the Moreland Corporation shut down their local factory 5 years ago. Just north of town sits Blackwater Marina, once the pride of the community, now a collection of rotting docks and abandoned boats. The local environmental agency suspected chemical dumping had occurred there before the shutdown, so I was tasked with taking water and soil samples. "Don't go poking around after dark," warned Jim, the elderly man who ran the bait shop at the edge of town. "Nothing good ever comes from that place at night." I smiled politely, assuming it was just small-town superstition. "I'll be careful." The marina was eerier than I expected. 30 or so boats remained, most partially submerged or listing dramatically. The main dock had collapsed in sections, creating a maze-like pathway through splintered wood and rusted metal. The harbormaster's office stood at the end, a small weathered building with windows either broken or darkened with years of grime. My first 2 visits were uneventful, taking samples during daylight hours, documenting unusually high levels of chemical residue, photographing the decay. The water was murky, almost black in places, with an iridescent sheen that shouldn't have been there 5 years after operations ceased. It was on my 3rd visit that things changed. I'd stayed later than intended, and sunset caught me still collecting samples. The temperature dropped suddenly, fog rolling in from the bay with unnatural speed. As darkness fell, the marina transformed. What had been merely decrepit in daylight became genuinely sinister in the gathering gloom. The fog muffled sound, creating a pocket of silence, broken only by water lapping against rotting hulls. I was preparing to leave when I heard it, a hollow metallic tapping from one of the larger boats about 50 yards down the dock. 3 taps, a pause, then 3 more, rhythmic, deliberate. Curiosity overrode caution. I directed my flashlight toward the sound, a faded commercial vessel called the Harvestman, half submerged and listing to port. The tapping continued. "Hello?" I called, instantly regretting breaking the silence. The tapping stopped. Then, faintly, a voice. "Help, please." It sounded like a child. I hesitated. The dock leading to the Harvestman was severely damaged. with missing boards and exposed nails.
But if someone was trapped aboard, especially a child, I couldn't just leave. "I'm coming. Keep talking so I can find you," I called, picking my way carefully along the dock, testing each board before putting my full weight on it. The voice didn't respond, but the tapping resumed, guiding me forward. Through the fog, the Harvest Man looked like a ghost ship. Its white paint had long since peeled away, revealing rust-streaked metal beneath. The gangplank was gone, but the boat had sunk enough that I could step directly from the dock onto the tilted deck. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a ship in advanced decay. The door to the cabin hung ajar, swinging slightly, though there was no breeze. The tapping was coming from below deck. I found the stairs, a metal ladder really, leading down into the hold. The air grew colder with each step, carrying a smell like low tide and something chemical burning my nostrils. "Where are you?" I called, my voice echoing strangely in the confined space. The hold was partially flooded, black water reaching mid-calf. My boots kept me dry, but the cold instantly penetrated. My flashlight reflected off the water, creating disorienting patterns on the metal walls. In the far corner, something moved. "Hello? I'm here to help," I said, moving closer. The water around my legs seemed to grow thicker, more resistant with each step. The tapping had stopped. The flashlight beam finally found the source of the movement, a small figure huddled against the wall, a child facing away from me. "Hey there," I said gently. "Let's get you out of here." The child didn't respond. As I approached, I noticed something odd. The water wasn't moving right around them. It seemed to flow toward the child rather than being displaced. "Are you hurt?" I asked, now just a few feet away. The child turned slowly. In the flashlight's beam, I saw not a face, but a black void where features should have been. Water streamed constantly from this emptiness, flowing down to join the floodwater. I stumbled backward, my flashlight dropping into the water. It continued to shine for a moment, illuminating multiple small figures now rising from beneath the surface all around me. The water level was rising impossibly fast. I scrambled back toward the ladder, but my feet sank into the hull as if the metal floor had turned to mud. Cold hands gripped my ankles, small hands, child-sized but inhumanly strong. "You came," whispered a chorus of voices, no longer a single child, but many, speaking in unison. "You'll stay, like we stayed, when they sealed the hold, when they let the water in." Horror washed over me with the realization. Historical articles had mentioned rumors that the Moreland Corporation had illegally transported workers and their families. When inspections were imminent, problematic passengers allegedly disappeared. I fought against the hands as the water rose past my waist. My feet were completely submerged in the softening metal of the hull as if it were quicksand. "Please," I gasped, "I'm not with them. I'm trying to expose what happened here." "Too late," the voices said. "Too late for us. Too late for you." I reached the ladder just as the water hit my chest. Pulling myself up with desperate strength, I broke free of whatever held my feet. I climbed frantically, the water rising behind me as if chasing me upward. On deck, I ran without looking back, leaping the gap to the dock. My legs gave out and I crawled the last few yards to solid ground. When I finally turned back, the harvestman sat exactly as before, silent, partially submerged. No sign of rising water or movement. My sample collection kit was still aboard. I left it there. The next day, I tried reporting what happened to local authorities. They exchanged knowing looks but took no action. When I mentioned the harvestman specifically, the sheriff's deputy grew pale. "That boat was salvaged 2 years ago," she said quietly. There's nothing left of it but a few hull plates on the bottom of the bay. I drove back to the marina that afternoon. In daylight, with other people around, I convinced myself I'd been confused about which boat I'd boarded. But the harvestman was gone. Where it had been moored was empty water. In my hotel that night, I reviewed the photographs I'd taken during previous visits. In every shot of the marina, clearly visible was the harvestman, except in the very last picture taken the day before my night encounter. The boat wasn't there. The chemical analysis of my earlier samples came back last week. Among the expected industrial pollutants was something else. Abnormally high concentrations of human DNA in the water, fragmented but present throughout the marina. I'm leaving Crestfall Bay tomorrow. My research is incomplete, but I can't stay. At night, I hear tapping on my hotel window. 3 taps, a pause, 3 more, even though I'm on the 4th floor. And when I shower, just for a moment, the water feels like small hands pulling me towards the drain. I used to be a transit worker for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. 22 years on the job, mostly night shifts until what happened at Westlake Station. Now I can't even look at a subway map without my hands shaking. Westlake wasn't supposed to exist. That's what makes this story hard to tell. It wasn't on any official transit maps, wasn't in the system logs, wasn't supposed to be a stop on the red line. But I've been there. I've seen what waits at the end of that tunnel. It started 3 years ago during routine maintenance on the Western Tunnel section. I was part of a 4-person team checking track conditions after hours. Me, Davis, Rodriguez and Chan, all veterans of the system. The trains had stopped running 2 hours earlier, and we had the tunnels to ourselves. McCarthy, you and Chan take the handcar down to section 38. My supervisor radioed. There's a pressure plate showing inconsistent readings. The handcar was an old-fashioned maintenance vehicle we pumped manually along the tracks. Slow work, but it let us inspect thoroughly as we went. Chan and I headed west from Elmwood Station, the last official stop on the Red Line. The tunnels stretched ahead, lit only by our headlamps and the occasional emergency light along the walls. Did you work the Western Extension project back in '05? Chan asked as we pumped the handcar deeper into the tunnel. No, I was on the Eastern Loop then, I replied. Why? Chan shrugged. Just rumors. Some of the old-timers say they started building a station out here, but it got shut down mid-construction. Budget cuts or something. I'd heard whispers over the years, how workers refused to go to certain sections, how equipment would malfunction for no reason. Every subway system has its ghost stories. You work underground long enough, your mind plays tricks on you. We'd gone about 2 miles when our radio crackled with static. Chan tried to respond, but got nothing back. Not unusual this deep in the tunnels. We should be approaching section 38 soon, I said, checking my map. Another 1/4 mile. But after that 1/4 mile, the tunnel continued. According to my map, we should have hit a maintenance door, but instead the tracks kept going. We exchanged confused glances, but kept pumping. System must have been extended since this map was printed, Chan suggested, though we both knew renovations were meticulously documented. After another 1/2 mile, the tunnel began to change. The modern concrete walls gave way to older brick construction. The emergency lights became scarcer, and the air grew noticeably colder. We should turn back, I said, an inexplicable dread settling in my stomach. This isn't right. Chan nodded, but before we could reverse the handcar, our headlamps illuminated something ahead. A station platform. It was unlike any station in our system. The architecture was from another era. Ornate ironwork, high vaulted ceilings and decorative tiles that might have been beautiful once, but were now cracked and discolored. A faded sign read, Westlake Station, 1923. "This isn't possible," Chan whispered. "The Western Line wasn't built until 1974. We stopped the handcar at the platform edge. Standard procedure would be to investigate, check structural integrity, document the anomaly. But everything in me screamed to turn around. Let's just report this when we get back, I suggested. We don't have authorization to explore unmarked stations." Chan was already stepping onto the platform, curiosity overriding caution. "McCarthy, this place shouldn't exist. Don't you want to know what it is?" Reluctantly, I followed. The platform was covered in a thick layer of dust, yet our footprints weren't the first. Others had been here, though the prints looked old and faded. The air was stagnant, with an unpleasant sweetness like overripe fruit. The station had a central concourse with a ticket booth, now empty, and a large wall clock permanently stopped at 2:37. No indication whether that was AM or PM. Corridors branched off in several directions and a grand staircase led to an upper level. "Hello," Chan called out, his voice echoing unnaturally. The echo seemed to continue longer than it should have, repeating until it transformed into something that wasn't quite Chan's voice anymore. We both froze, listening as the distorted echo finally faded. "We need to leave," I said firmly. "Now!" Then we heard it, the distant sound of an approaching train, a rhythmic clickety-clack growing steadily louder from the tunnel beyond the station. "That's impossible," I said. "No trains run at this hour, and there's no station here for them to stop at anyway." Yet the sound grew closer. A faint light appeared in the tunnel, growing brighter. "Maybe it's another maintenance crew?" Chan suggested without conviction. The light emerging from the tunnel wasn't the bright LED of a modern train or maintenance vehicle. It was a softer, yellowish glow. As it approached, we could make out an old-style passenger car, like something from a museum. It moved slowly, almost gliding into the station despite its apparent weight. The train came to a stop with a sigh of steam, something our electric system hadn't used in over a century. Through the windows, we could see figures seated inside, silhouettes without clear features. "This isn't real," I whispered, backing away. "This can't be real." The train doors opened with a screech of metal. No passengers disembarked. Instead, a conductor leaned out. He wore an old-fashioned uniform, his face shadowed under his cap. "All aboard," he announced in a hollow voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Final stop. Everyone must disembark at Westlake." The silhouetted passengers began to rise from their seats inside the train. Chan took a step toward the open doors, as if in a trance. I grabbed his arm. "Chan, don't!" He turned to me with a blank expression. "I think I'm supposed to get on, McCarthy. I think I've had a ticket all along." He reached into his pocket and pulled out what looked like an old paper subway token, yellowed with age. I'd never seen him with it before. The shadowy passengers began flowing out of the train, dozens of them moving in unison but making no sound as they crossed the platform toward the exits. They passed through us like cold drafts. Chan pulled away from my grip and approached the train. The conductor reached out a hand, unnaturally long, with too many joints in the fingers. "Last train home," the conductor said to Chan. "You've been waiting so long." I lunged forward, grabbing Chan again and yanking him backward, just as the conductor's fingers brushed his jacket. We both fell to the platform floor. A change came over the station. The lights dimmed, and the silhouettes stopped their procession. As one, they turned toward us. The conductor's face became visible beneath his cap. Not a face at all, but a void filled with spinning darkness. "Not your time," the conductor said, but his voice had multiplied into many. "But you've seen the station now. You'll be back when your ticket is punched." We ran. Back to our handcar, pumping with desperate speed away from Westlake Station. Neither of us looked back, even when we heard the train doors closing and the sound of it departing. Not continuing forward, but returning the way it had come, as if we had interrupted its regular route. We didn't stop until we reached Elmwood Station, where we found Rodriguez and Davis with security preparing to send a search party for us. According to them, we'd been gone for nearly 5 hours, though it had felt like less than one. When we told our story, no one believed us. The Western Tunnel was explored the next day by a full team. They found nothing but solid concrete wall beyond Section 38. No continuation of the tunnel. No mysterious station. Chan quit a week later. I haven't heard from him since, though sometimes I think I see him waiting on empty platforms late at night. I kept working for 2 more years, always refusing assignments to the Western Tunnel. Then, last month, I found an old paper token in my locker. I don't know how it got there. On one side, it reads, "Westlake Station one way." I quit the next day, but I still hear it sometimes when I'm falling asleep. The distant sound of an approaching train that isn't on any schedule, coming to a station that doesn't exist, waiting for passengers who aren't supposed to board. Not yet, anyway. That concludes tonight's case. But the shadows don't sleep. I'm Doctor. Haunted. Until next time, keep your doors locked, your lights low, and your nightmares closer.